Hi, I'm Ray. Today I'm going to share with you what I learned from reading The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. So it starts by talking about the Toltec way of life and that their goal is kind of the accessibility of happiness and love. So that's all good. So the book talks about that we make thousands of agreements with ourselves and with others. And in those agreements, we tell ourselves who we are, what we feel, what we believe, how to behave. And the result is our personality, right? So all these agreements come together and that's your personality. And the agreements rule our life. And if we don't like our life, then we need to change our agreements. So that's kind of the premise of the book. All right, so then there's 4 agreements, and I'm going to go through each one, but I'll first list them out. The first agreement is be impeccable with your word. The second is don't take anything personally. The third, don't make assumptions. And the fourth, always do your best. All right, and I'm going to go through and talk about what the book kind of meant, or what I took away, what I felt it meant, what it meant to me for each of these. So be impeccable with your word, the first agreement. And the book says that this is the most important and also the most difficult of the 4 agreements. It talks about how your word is really powerful. And as an example, it talks about how Hitler used his words to manipulate a whole country by activating their fear and convincing them to do awful, violent, terrible things. So just talking about how powerful our word is and what can be done with your word. It then talks about seeds of fear and doubt versus seeds of love. And so we want to be planting seeds of love with our word. So because the wording of this agreement is be impeccable with your word, it talks about the choice of the word impeccable, which means without sin in Latin. So the book talks about how sin means going against yourself. And so this idea of being impeccable with your word, it's telling us not to use your words against yourself, right? So don't use your words as a weapon against you. And it goes on to explain that sometimes where you think you might be using your words as a weapon against someone else, you're actually using them against yourself. And the example in the book is that if I go and call someone stupid, it seems like maybe I'm using my word against them, but I'm actually using my word against myself, because if I go out and call someone stupid, then that person is not going to like me very much. So with my words, I'm hurting myself. So it talks about using your energy in the direction of truth and love for yourself. And there's a whole story about a girl and how damaging it is when her mother tells her she's a bad singer, and how that's going to affect her for the rest of her life and her desire to sing and her joy that she might have been able to get from singing that now she won't. And it talks about another example when your friend calls you ugly and the kind of lasting damage that can come from that. And then it talks about how the only thing that can break the spell caused by that damage from words is a new agreement based on the truth, and talks about how only the truth can set us free, right? So the truth is a very freeing thing. And I definitely agree with that the truth can be really freeing. So it then goes on to talk about gossip, and it asks us to think of gossip like a computer virus. So it's something that's bad and that's spreading. And so we shouldn't do that. And it talks about how we use our words against ourselves all the time. We say things like, I look fat, I look ugly, I'm getting old, I'm stupid, I'm not good enough. We all have these things we tell ourselves. And we're using our words in that case as kind of a weapon against ourselves. So then it talks about how you can really only receive a negative idea if your mind is a fertile ground for that idea. So it says, wait, I have this in bold, I'm going to read this. It says, how much you love yourself and how you feel about yourself are directly proportionate to the quality and integrity of your word. All right, I'm going to read that again. It said, how much you love yourself and how you feel about yourself are directly proportionate to the quality and integrity of your word. It talks about how when you're impeccable with your word, you're going to feel good and happy and at peace. And that we should use the word to share our love, starting with ourselves, sharing love with ourselves. So tell yourself, I'm talking to you now. This is in the book, but it's also good advice. So I'm telling you, tell yourself how wonderful you are. Tell yourself how great you are. Remind yourself that you love yourself. And then actively love yourself. And that's not related to this at all, but I just think you should. All right. So to me, what all of that means is I need to be honest and true to myself. I should not be telling myself hurtful lies, and I need to recognize when I do that so that I can stop and change that narrative. And then it also tells me that we shouldn't be flaking out on anyone, but especially on ourselves. So we need to honor our commitments. That's our word. When we say we're going to do something, do it. When you tell yourself you're going to do something, do it. Respect and love and honor yourself enough to keep that commitment to yourself. The second agreement is don't take anything personally. And the book tells us that you really only can take something personally when you agree with what is said. Right? If someone says something that you find hurtful, it's because you're finding an element of truth in there. So don't take it personally. And it says that when we take things personally, we're actually being selfish. So this was an interesting spin on that. It kind of changed how I thought about it. So if we're assuming everything's about us and we're getting hurt by what is said, we're just focused on ourselves and we're being selfish. And then there's a very freeing thought in this book. And what it says is, nothing other people do is because of you. Nothing other people do is because of you. Right? It has nothing to do with you. How freeing is that? Most of what people do has really nothing to do with you. They're not sitting there thinking about you. You're sitting there thinking about you. So don't let what others might think about you affect you, because your point of view is personal and it's no one's truth but yours. Right? And it says, and this is a quote from the book, even the opinions you have about yourself are not necessarily true. I know that a lot of the opinions I have about myself are not true. A lot of those damaging, hurtful lies. So this is tying it back to that first agreement, being impeccable with your word. You know, don't take anything personally because it's not necessarily the truth. And then it also says if someone is not treating you with love and respect, that it's actually a gift if that person walks away from you. And I liked that thought, that if someone is not a positive force in your life and they're not treating you with love and respect, then it's a good thing if they walk away. That's not who you need in your life. And when you're able to achieve this agreement, really not take anything personally, it really makes you free because no one can hurt you. No one has the power to hurt you if you don't take anything personally. Right? Obviously, all these agreements are really hard to keep. That's something we'll get to. That's what the book talks about it, right? We're not going to be perfect at all these things all the time. It's really hard not to take anything personally, really hard. But it's something that I am now very aware of and thinking about, focused on, and it's something I'm working on. The third agreement is don't make assumptions. And the problem with assumptions is that we tend to believe they are the truth. We assume things, we believe they're true. And when we believe that they're truth, we take it personally. Uh-oh, problem, agreement 2 said not to take it personally. And then we blame, we react, we send emotional poison out with our words, with our reaction. And that is a problem with agreement 1. So not good. Don't make assumptions. We often assume our partners know what we're thinking, or our friends, and we think they know us well enough that we don't have to tell them what we want. Guess what? We're wrong. They don't know if you don't tell them. So really important to openly communicate and ask questions rather than making assumptions. It's also really important that we be what we are, be true to ourselves, and not present a false image. Right? So this is 100% me. And I try to be really true to myself, love myself for the unique, different person I am, and I'm not trying to be anybody else. Just the best me. And when you are not presenting a false image and you're being unapologetically yourself, what you'll find is that you end up with people in your life who love you for being you. And that's the best. We don't need to pretend to be someone else, because then people might like us that aren't the right people for us, right? We want to be liked by the people that are actually drawn to who we are. So we need to be authentic. We need to ask questions. We need to ask for clarifications. We need to communicate clearly. That's what the assumptions are all about. The fourth agreement is always do your best, because obviously it's really hard to always be impeccable with your word and not take anything personally. And I already forgot the third one. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best. And that's the one that really helps you to make all the other agreements habits. So when I first saw that always do your best, I was like, oh gosh, this section's not for me. It's not possible to always do my best. That's too exhausting. I do too many things. I can't do my best at all of them. It's not possible. But when I kept reading, I found that they were onto something, and it actually struck a chord. And I'm going to read a quote from the book. It says, "Your best is never going to be the same from one moment to the next." Right? So it's saying that your best is allowed to be different sometimes. Your best today is not the same as your best yesterday or your best tomorrow. Your best is different if you're tired versus when you're energetic. Your best is different when you're healthy as opposed to when you're sick. Your best is different when you're sober as opposed to when you're drunk. Your best is different when you're feeling wonderful and content and happy as opposed to when you're feeling upset and angry and jealous. So when I read all that, I realized that I need to set myself up for success to really do my best by ensuring I am feeling my best as often as possible. So I take from this always do my best that I need to treat myself my best, so that my best is good. I want my best to be good. And the book talks about how if you always do your best, you can't judge yourself, right? You can break that spell of guilt, blame, and self-punishment. And it just feels amazing when you're able to do that. I will tell you from recent experience, because I'm just so proud of all I've done to take control of my health. Getting down to that healthy BMI and really making myself so well that I can live a normal life even with my chronic illness. Nothing feels better than loving yourself and being proud of yourself. Nothing. It's the best feeling. So it's really important that you're practicing self-love, actively practicing self-love, and taking pride in what you do. Now it's story time. All right, so there's a story in the book, and it says, it's a conversation between like a master, a Buddhist master, I guess, a Buddhist master, and like a person that's trying to reach enlightenment. And what happens is the person that's trying to reach enlightenment says to the master, hey, if I meditate for 4 hours a day, how long will it take me to transcend? And the master says, perhaps it'll take you 10 years to transcend if you meditate for 4 hours a day. So the person comes back to the master and they say, well, what if I meditate for 8 hours a day? If I meditate for 8 hours a day, how long will it take to transcend? And the master says, perhaps it will take 20 years if you meditate for 8 hours a day. And so the person says, well, why would it take longer if I meditate more? right? Why would it take longer to transcend if I'm meditating for more hours every day? And here I have a quote from the book. The master replied, "You are not here to sacrifice your joy of life. You are here to live, to be happy, and to love. If you can do your best in 2 hours of meditation, but you spend 8 hours instead, you will only grow tired, miss the point, and you won't enjoy life. Do your best, and perhaps you will learn that no matter how long you meditate, you can live, love, and be happy." And then another quote from the book, "Doing your best, you are going to live your life intensely. You are going to be productive. You are going to be good to yourself because you will be giving yourself to your family, to your community, to everything." Right? And again, I took from that I really do need to actively love myself. So that means I don't just think I'm great, but I treat myself well. I care for myself. I watch what I eat. I'm drinking my water. I see my doctors when I need to. I take the medication I need to. All the things I need to do to take care of myself, my mental and physical health. It talks about how doing your best means that you're taking action because you love it, not because you're expecting a reward. And it goes into this whole depressing thing. This part of the book was very depressing about how most people are working for a payday and not because they enjoy their work. Therefore, they're frustrated and they're trying to escape. And it says, quote, "They get drunk because they don't like themselves. They don't like their life. There are many ways we hurt ourselves when we don't like who we are." And we do hurt ourselves when we don't like who we are, and we're not able to do our best when we're focused on that. So really important, I thought, to not be attached to the reward was my takeaway. We don't want to be attached to that extrinsic reward. We want to live fully. We want to take action. So we don't want to get stuck in inaction, watching hours and hours of television. We want to express what we are and do everything with love and do it our best. And then it talks about how you need to always do your best to keep these 4 agreements for a good, happy life, right? So that 4th one kind of ties them all together because we need to do our best with all 4 agreements. And you're not going to always be perfect. So if you break one, you start over. You get back on the horse. And it talks about the Toltec path to freedom, how we shouldn't blame, don't place blame, and you can have the freedom to be ourselves and live an authentic life, that we shouldn't do things to please others or to be accepted by others, and we should live to please ourselves. It also talks about the importance of awareness. So I've been really learning a lot about myself, and I think that's been crucial in bettering myself. So we really need to be aware before we're able to change. So step 1 is to really get in touch with yourself and be aware of when you're not following these agreements. And then you can start to shift those agreements that you make with yourself. And we can replace all those kind of bad agreements that we develop, bad habits that we develop, with good ones. So to recap, the 4 agreements: be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. And always do your best. Do your best. And I really thought this was a great book. It did speak to me a lot. It was written kind of like flowery and weird, I felt. So I'm telling you it in regular English. Hopefully that's helpful. But those were my takeaways. Let me know if there's other books that you've kind of been interested in reading and you'd like me to read and tell you what it says, or if there's books you'd like to chat with me about. I'm definitely interested in your suggestions. And I hope that today you are able to go out there, be your true, authentic self, be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and do your best. You're awesome. Love yourself. look gorgeous. Bye.